Tubular Labs, powered by Chartbeat, is a leader in global social video intelligence and measurement, providing a unified view of the passions and behaviours of audiences across YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, Twitch, and more. With the largest social video database covering more than 15 billion videos and 45 million creators, Tubular helps household name brands, leading agencies, and the largest media properties grow their business and lead on social by anticipating trending content, new creators, and what's next in culture. For more info, visit tubularlabs.com. Hi, I'm Justin Crosby and welcome back to TellyCast after our short summer break. And I'm delighted this week for our first show back to have Ben Powell-Jones from Strongwatch Studios with us. Ben?
Thanks for having me, Justin.
Not
Delighted
at all.
to be here.
It's great to have you here. We had Thom, your partner, obviously on a few months ago, but we've never had you on the sofa.
Yep.
So it's great to have you join us. So thank you for your time.
Thanks for having me.
Let's get straight into talking about Strongwatch in terms of, how you founded it. So tell us a little bit about the history. 2023, when you founded the company?
That's right. Coming up to the end of our third year at the moment, actually. Next month is 3 years, which I think, it feels like it's gone by in a flash, but also, I think Thom and I have aged about a decade in those 3 years. So.
Well, you guys are at the forefront of the digital first movement, if you like. I like to call it a movement, or certainly a sort of subsector of the content industry. So take us back to that time when you went into business with Jimmy Mulville, obviously from Hat Tricks, because he invested in the business. Why do you think that Jimmy invested in Strongwatch? What was the interest from his point of view?
Yeah, sure. So Thom and I are both from a TV background. He'd worked at Indies and then spent a long time at Channel 4 as a digital commissioner. And similar, I'd worked at Indies and the BBC for a while, and then I'd spent a long time at Endemol Shine, Endemol and then Endemol Shine. And then we both moved to LADbible to set up LADbible Studios, essentially. And, I brought a bunch of really talented people over from Endemol, and, Thom had people he brought in too, and we set up LADbible Studios, and I did that for about 5 years. Thom was there for about 3.5, 4. And basically it felt like there was a point in the industry where we were being approached individually by different companies, and it basically broke down into two areas. It was either TV companies that were saying, we need to get our digital offering straight. We need to figure out what we're doing with digital. And that was interesting, but, I love TV, so does Thom. We still watch loads of it, we still make it, but going back to TV specifically felt like where we'd come from. And then the other side, there was a lot of digital companies saying, we want to go through the process LADbible went through and develop a slate of formats and IPs and things like that. But ultimately, at that point in time, LADbible were the biggest version of that company. So it felt like going to a smaller version of what you were doing now. And we felt like, I don't think either of us had ever been people that were desperate to start a company. That had certainly never been something I'd been thinking about or trying to work towards. But we felt like there was a moment in time where there were these two kind of separate industries that were becoming one single industry, which was content distribution. And there was a world where if we sort of teamed up and set up a company, we could not be employed by one of them, but potentially have several of them as clients. And it felt like a timing thing. I don't think either of us were building towards trying to do something on our own. It just felt like, look, not through innate skill or, natural genius or anything like that. There's just been a series of decisions we've made in our careers that's put us in a position where there was Thom, another guy we're working with called Danny, who have got this kind of TV and digital background that is very sought after. So why not roll the dice on?
And very rare, actually.
At that point in time, it was, yeah. It's certainly an exec level.
Yeah.
So why not try rolling the dice on that being something that people were interested in? So we took that out as a proposition several places, and we were having long conversations with several really interesting areas, companies, kind of indies and angel investors as well. And then Adam Reeve, who we've actually just hired, he was working at Hattrick at the point, and I was having dinner with him, and he said, "Oh, have you met Jimmy?" And I said, "No, we haven't actually." And he said, I think I could get you a meeting." And we said, "Okay, great." We went into that meeting, and Jimmy was just incredibly decisive and seemed like he knew what he wanted. And whereas the other conversations felt a bit more about how would you fit in specifically to what we've already got going on, Jimmy felt more like, I want people who know what this is and for them to get on with it. And we had this...
As opposed to building something himself, right? Because he could have done that. He could have approached it that way, but this is a very different approach.
Exactly. And I think if you look at his umbrella of companies he's invested in, it follows that model of, I want people that I like the look of, to set something up and them do it. And we had one meeting with him. He said, "Right, I'm off to America for a couple of weeks, and we'll talk when I get back." Fine. So we carried on with the other conversations. He came back from America, and it just went really quickly. He was interested. The offer was really good. He was offering sort of back end support as well as other things. So it just felt like a really good match, and moved very, very quickly.
And you talked about Adam Reeve,
yeah,
who you've just hired. You've made a couple of hires, right? So tell us about those and what the thinking behind those quite traditional TV industry exec roles that you've filled, which is kind of interesting for a digital-first business. And I know that you also produce TV as well. You just mentioned that. But tell us the thinking about who you've hired and why.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting that you pick up on that, because that's something a lot of people have sort of said, like, the exec hires seem to be coming from a more traditional background. And I think it's... When I was at LADbible, the team was split about 50-50 between TV sort of and digital native. And that was fine. It worked really, really well because, of the work we were doing there. In Strongwatch, we're often referred to as a digital company, but I think we think of ourselves as a content company. And I think if someone said to me now, "Oh, we want to invest in you to start a TV indie," I just think that's a mad idea. In the same way that if someone said, "Why don't you invest in being a company that makes ads?" I also think that's not a great idea, because there's no reason why you can't do all of it. And at the moment, what we're looking at is, when we look at our slate of stuff, we have channel management, TV. We obviously finished in March making a big project for Netflix. We've got digital projects and branded projects. And I think that the way we look at our company is that if there is a need for video, we want to be the first port of call to make it. If someone came to us and said, "Oh, we need you to make a video for the CEO of Barclays Bank, it's only going to be seen by 3 shareholders," great, I don't mind. Like, if the ROI works and it's a functional piece of business, and that's great to us. And so when we're looking for those senior roles, first of all, we've been working with Adam and Helen for a while. They've been in their company as freelancers. But ultimately, what we're looking for is flexibility. And I think there's a lot of TV people at the moment who are struggling to find work because of the state of the industry, and they're reapplying for more and more TV roles. But if I was them, I'd be thinking about, much broader, like other brands, other digital agencies, other places that need podcast management. If you're a creative person and you can be flexible in your thinking, then I think you might find that you've got loads of skills that have been sort of born through going through the hierarchical world of TV that are really, really valuable to companies that are just setting up new departments, who potentially are getting it right in some ways, but then struggling with actually figuring out what the processes should be behind the scenes. And for us, when we're delivering something to the BBC or to Channel 4 or to Netflix, in fact, actually the creative bit, lots of people can do that, but the behind the scenes bits of delivering to these big broadcasters or streamers who have really specific ways of things being delivered.
Quite a stringent delivery process, right?
Massively, yeah. They're the bits I think you really want people who have kind of who can do that rather than having to learn it on the fly.
Yeah. I mean, that's really interesting, because we all know there's a bit of a crisis for freelancers at the moment, or TV freelancers. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that I seem to come across is and I think is one of the biggest blocks is mindset, really.
Right.
The mindset shift for TV freelancers, because many of them, let's start with an age perspective, experienced TV execs are, 40, 45 plus potentially, and they might not be necessarily digital, certainly not digital native. And but what you're saying is that a lot of the skills and the experience that you've got in terms of delivery to a TV business is super important, because obviously now in a multi-platform world, you've got to be able to produce for multiple platforms, including TV, right? And TV is possibly the end product, or one of the end products of what you're doing, maybe 2-3 years into a project. So that makes a lot of sense, the way that you're approaching that, and presumably merging those with digital native team members as well in the business.
Absolutely. I mean, I think I've told this story before, but the last thing I worked on at Endemol Shine before I left was like a $500,000 non-broadcast pilot. So it's like £500,000, something that's never going to be seen. And then I got to LADbible, and they said, "Oh, look at this documentary we've just made." And I watched it. I was like, "Oh, that's good. How much was that?" And they said £200. And I was like, "Right, there's a." So it kind of, there was a moment there where I was like, I've got to figure out how to retrain my brain, because when I first got to LADbible, I had this arrogance about me where I was going, "Oh, they're going to love me because I'm just going to come in and go, no, we'll make this loads more glossy.
I'm the TV guy."
Yeah,
right?
yeah. I know how to make things glossy and really professional looking and awesome. And ultimately, what I very quickly learned was none of that was relevant or wanted.
Yeah.
So yes, I think you've got to get people in with. You mentioned the mindset. It's flexibility, and then the other really, really big difference for TV people, and this is something that someone like Adam took to amazingly quickly, and I mentioned Danny Lorimer, who's now at Sony. When we got to LADbible, he immediately took to this, is in TV, you are hired to do a specific role, but I just don't think we'll ever hire anyone again that is a development exec. That person will also have to do the shoot, produce a shoot, sit in the post. Everything is just, you've just got to figure out how to do all the different bits.
Yeah. And understand the full workflow and be able to potentially carry many of those out. Maybe not all of them, because there are certain skills that are more difficult to learn, I guess, like titling and thumbnails and the distribution, more at the packaging and the distribution end. But certainly through that smaller team requirement for a digital, then that flexibility and openness to that is obviously crucial, isn't it?
Yeah, I think the bit we draw the line on is when we're talking to people about roles is we say you'll never have to learn any tech. So you'll never have to edit, you'll never have to use the cameras, but you will have to sit with an editor, you will have to direct the DOP, you'll have to do all the other creative bits around that.
Yeah.
Want to get ahead in digital-first content? The Drop is the go-to newsletter for industry professionals, delivering insider news, trends, and insights straight to your inbox. Navigate the fast-changing landscape of digital-first production, distribution, and monetization. Sign up now for free at dropmedia.co.uk and stay informed with The Drop.
So that leads me to think about the structure. But can you talk us through the structure of your business then, in terms of the team members that you have? I mean, I certainly see digital first businesses, the most common shout outs I see are for editors, for in-house editors. I mean, it is, and I can completely understand that because of the sheer amount of content that you're producing for different platforms. But talk us through your structure and how that works in terms of now and how you see it going in the future.
Yeah, so we are a very small company, basically. We're tiny. There's Tom and I, and then full-time hires is like 5 people or something now. It's very, very small. And the way it works is that we have people that we work with often, and we try to get back in for multiple projects. But ultimately, it scales up and down very quickly depending on which projects are in. So Tom and I at the top, which is a bottleneck, but that's how it has to be at the moment, just because of the size of it. We're going out and trying to win new work and then pulling it back in, being across the clients. For us at the moment, because we're so new, it's very important for us to be at least at the top 10% of every project. And we are across every project. We sort of split them up, so one of us leads on it, but we're both across everything. And then below that, you have Adam, who has been, as I say, working with us for a while, but he's essentially head of creative, so he's also across every project, and he's kind of running each one. And then next to him in the production side, you have Helen, who we've just hired, and again,
that's Helen Gordon, yeah.
Helen Gordon, correct. And she's across every project as well. And then after that sort of falls down into project by project, building out, scaling, out in. We've just had 5 new people start this morning on a project we've got. Have worked with all of them multiple times, but it really is that kind of like growing and shrinking based on what the business needs.
So you don't have any editors in-house?
We don't have any editors in-house. We'd love to. We'd love to get to that point, but what we find is that because you're absolutely right in that it's such a crucial role based on how much work is delivered, but equally, every project we do is so different to every other project. Like I mentioned the Barclays Bank video earlier.
But yeah, by nature of the anything in video that you're
exactly.
You're up for, essentially.
Exactly. So at the moment, it is working better for us to have this kind of pool of trusted editors that we use for very specific things. And what we don't want to do with hires, we'll eventually get there and we'll build it out, but we don't want to hire people to do a specific thing that they're fantastic at, and then the next job we get in is something that's a little bit different, and then they have to get moved on to that. It's just working for us better to hire project by project.
Right. Okay. Now, I mean, you're working on projects, you're running channels, you're creating your own IP, but you're also working with BBC and you're working with Channel 4. How have you seen digital commissioning specifically change over the last couple of years? Because it seems to me that it really has evolved to a certain stage now, particularly with the BBC coming into the market. But yeah, tell us how you see digital commissioning changing.
I think the biggest change is that digital has always historically been seen as something you do as an add-on, whereas increasingly it's been looked at as like the BBC Perspectives thing that you've just mentioned that you were alluding to. That's the main thing. That's the point of that commission. But I don't think it's figured out what it is yet. There's still a process that we're going through as an industry where we sort of try and figure out where we are. And I think the thing Thom and I always say is that process will be ended where there isn't 2 commissioning teams. When there's one commissioning team and they commission digital and TV and whatever else they commission out of that area, that's when that process is finished, because it's then reached that point where it's just commissioning content, which is where it's leading.
And that's where you think it's going, literally?
Well, it sort of has to, because it's never going to, again, break further apart. As in, with more stuff going from YouTube onto Netflix, it makes sense to look at things that do well on digital and think not just TV down, how do we put old TV shows on YouTube, but if this channel is doing really well, how do we experiment with putting that on TV and going the other direction? And ultimately, what everyone's looking for is a good cost per minute and something that people enjoy watching. And why should there be a barrier to serving people content that works for them just because it's a different team commissioning it?
Yeah. I mean, do you see content acquisition as becoming one of the dominant essentially business models within the TV and digital space? I mean, when I say that, I'm thinking of, for example, the TFI reboot.
Oh, yeah.
And also Piers Morgan.
Yeah.
Uncensored. I mean, both of those two, I mentioned this on a previous show, but both of them, I was in a hotel room a few weeks ago and I sat down on Saturday night after the football, 10 o'clock at night, turned on the hotel TV, and those shows were both on at the same time.
Right, yeah.
And those were shows that basically have been podcast shows that have obviously been built. I mean, yes, there were obviously existing TV properties or featuring big talent that's very established in their areas, but it seems to me that the multi-platform model that we're talking about, when you're creating original IP, being able to launch and build these shows in the digital world, but all the time thinking at how this can end up as a TV show. I mean, do you see that becoming a dominant model? You know, the content acquisition as opposed to this commissioning.
Yeah, I think I'm not sure about dominant. I think it's definitely going to be something that we just see as part of the menu of how things end up being put on TV. I think the two examples you've given there are really, really good ones, and quite different ones, because and through talking about them, you can see why some of them might become more common and some of them might become less. Because if you look at Piers is one, you know, people have strong opinions on Piers, but he knows what works and he makes successful content. And what he did do was invest a lot in that, building up to the point where it could be you know, the Uncensored brand on YouTube has been doing well for a long time now. Yeah. And there's not that many people that can afford to do that. Like, I remember when I first watched it, I was like, this is great. And it's the kind of content I quite like to watch. I like watching, you know, Jubilee surrounding stuff. I like watching debate shows, lively debate shows. But it looks like a TV show, as in, how is this possibly making any money on YouTube? Maybe it was, maybe it wasn't. But it's got to a point now where it will make money. And, you know, he's just announced his massive amount of investment through Murdoch and all that kind of stuff as well, Elizabeth Murdoch. So that seems like a no-brainer, but there's a limited amount of people who can sit down and build something by investing in it themselves or getting other people to give them money. You know, you can see a world where someone like Richard Osman could start doing a quiz-based YouTube channel and build that up for years, and then that would just naturally, seamlessly go on somewhere else, and he can probably do that with his highly successful career. But other people won't be able to do that in the same way. They don't have the name of somebody like Piers, and they don't have the money to invest in it. And then the other example that you gave, TFI Friday, I think there will be lots of people, and in fact we've talked to a lot of people who are trying to do that at the moment, and I think we'll see a flurry of things like that happening. However, there are endless roadblocks to using historic IP. And so I don't think that will become dominant, because no matter the desire, there is just so much sort of legal scaffolding to work your way around to freeing up being able to use those kind of old classic pieces.
So a traditional TV show that was first commissioned, say 20 years ago or something, you'd say the legal framework of that is very difficult to break down, is it?
It's just very complicated. And yeah, we've been through conversations with multiple different people from multiple different broadcasters where there's an appetite to do it, but the people who have to sign off on it are so spread out. And, you know, with historic IP, there'll be somebody that owns a bit of it, and then you know, it's split between the IP split between the broadcaster and the production company. There's just, everybody has to align on making it happen, and then the money has to work for it to be valuable enough. So I suppose
to that point, the money when you're beginning to reboot a project for digital is perhaps not what they're used to in the old sort of TV. God, yes. So it's like, okay, you know, one person who may have some of the rights will be expecting a TV level advance or whatever that might be, and that's not going to happen.
Absolutely. So. And then there's also, you know, sometimes really classic old shows, owners might have a very specific idea of what the tone should be, and maybe that isn't quite right for digital, and there's lots to figure out. It's a great idea. I think we'll see some successes there, but I don't think it'll be where it's not going to be like, oh great, open the archives and all these things are flooding out that are just instantly accessible.
Do you think there's still some TV snobbiness about digital?
Yeah, definitely. And like, you know, in some cases maybe rightly so, you know, but it's a silly way to think. And it's, you know, over the years, as you can imagine, I left TV, went to LADbible. I had a lot of ribbing from my peers about that. And ultimately, it's just not a productive way to think for yourself, because you want to be putting yourself in a position where you can do any job in the creative industry, essentially. But yes, there is.
Yeah. So let's talk about a comedy thing.
Yeah.
Which you've had a load of success with for Channel 4. So for anybody that doesn't know about a comedy thing, talk us through that and how that project developed.
Sure. So that was the genius of my business partner, Tom Gulseven. He basically had this idea where the thing that's great about Tom, and we worked together at Lad, and I was the creative director and he was the director of new business. I think his title was, sorry if that's wrong, Tom. But ultimately what he's amazing at is he's amazing at seeing what gaps are appearing and how something could be filled. And one of the things that we do as Strongwatch is whenever we go into a pitch, the first layer of the pitch is a strategy or a business case. So we don't ever go in and go, listen to this brilliant idea, because everyone has brilliant ideas. We have brilliant ideas all the time. So competing with brilliant ideas, I don't think we think is a good way to go. What we do is compete with, is anyone else offering this, like make it a no-brainer? And then the idea can be on top of that. And ultimately, Tom came up with this idea. He said correctly that there's no market anymore, especially even more so now with Live at the Apollo being cancelled, for young upcoming comedians. Because the pathway used to be that you'd go to Edinburgh, you'd do your show, people loved it, you'd come back and then you'd get on a panel show, build up, hopefully maybe you'd get your own show or you'd be the host of a panel show. Now you go to Edinburgh, people like it, you get a 5-star review and you go, okay, well, I guess I'll go back to London and gig again. So what we were thinking was that there was this gap in the market. We could see that on TikTok and on YouTube, the audience for comedy hadn't gone away. It just wasn't being served on TV. So we pitched to Carl Warner at Channel 4 that they should do a comedy thing. That was, as in, you should do something in comedy. That name sort of stuck, right. Unfortunately or unfortunately. And then it took a long process. Carl left, handed it to Sasha Carey, who became the commissioner eventually. But ultimately, the idea was there's a gap here for something to be done.
So it's strategy first and creative second.
Yeah. And I think that could have easily been us going in and saying you should do something on archaeological digs. You know, the idea, we love comedy. We do a lot of comedy stuff as a business, but we were sort of pitching a strategy that there was an underserved gap in the market for upcoming UK comedy. So that's where we are. We've just gone into our second year, re-signed for the second year. And actually last night we did a video, went up with Abby Boom, who's a famous Australian YouTuber, and it's doing well, and I advise everyone to watch that video because it's funny.
All right, okay. Well, we'll put a link in the episode description so you can go ahead and look at that. So how does, can we dig a little bit into how that model works from a business perspective?
Yeah.
Because obviously you're running a channel for them, so it's multiple weekly shows, right? So how does that, there's a lot of different rights models in digital first. There doesn't seem to be one single model that's emerging, particularly when you've got brands investing into content now and wanting to create IP. And so can you take us inside that a little bit for a comedy thing in Channel 4? What's that relationship there?
Yeah, I can. We can look inside it, but ultimately it'll be less exciting than you might hope because it is their terms of trade, essentially. Yeah. So there's nothing that's been created that's groundbreaking or brand new. It did take a long time negotiating on both sides because it's the first time they've done this, and understandably that's going to take a while of figuring out how it should all work and who owns what. But ultimately, a comedy thing is done under their standard terms of trade. So there's nothing too pioneering about the legality around it. But I think we're very happy with how it is. They're happy.
But do you own the rights? You fully own the rights, or does
so they own the channel? We own the formats.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Right. And do you and is that's if that's the first time that Channel 4 has done that sort of deal, as you say, that's possibly created a precedent for them, do you think? Or, I know you can't talk for them, but...
No, I think lots of broadcasters are interested in that sort of space. There's been, over the years we've been going, there's been lots of conversations around that. And I think, that sort of space is something that we will see more of in the future. And whether it's, what Channel 4 did, which we were really happy with, was committed to a year, because I think they understand after 4.0 they understand how long it takes to grow things, and it's whether people are committing to 3 months of content, 6 months, or a year. It's tricky because it's sort of a different business model that they're getting their heads around, because ultimately you have to put the money up front.
Yeah.
There's no commissioner giving you the cash to do it.
Yeah.
So it does take, and I understand why. I understand, especially at the moment when there's not loads of money around, why people are cautious. But yeah, I definitely think that there will be more thought processes around that, and there currently are thought processes around how people make that kind of thing work.
Yeah. So take us through other. You talked about all the different areas that Strongwatch is working in. Do you work in channel management? Do you work in? Because obviously we've talked about proprietary IP. We're talking about brand funded. Presumably, you do a brand funded service business as well. So take us through all those different sort of tentacles of the octopus.
The tentacles of the octopus, yeah. So exactly as you say, we're always looking for a way to work with people on video content. So I mentioned earlier we did the Sidemen Series 3 for Netflix, which finished in March. That was our biggest project so far. We've done stuff for Channel 4, for ITV, for BBC, as we sort of talked about. We've done stuff for individual creators. We do channel management. We have a couple of different channels that we run for different people. We do all Hat-Trick's channel management. We've obviously got the comedy thing. We've got this new project, which is a kind of privately funded thing called Work in Progress. And so we do channel management for lots of different places. And then, as you alluded to, we sort of invest in stuff. So we do the People Are Deep thing, which is our weekly factual series that we've been running for a couple of years now. And we've got another project I'm really excited about. I think we're all super excited about that. I don't think I can mention just yet, but more in the comedy space, I'd say.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll say that.
All right. Talking about People Are Deep.
Yeah.
And coming back to what we talked about earlier in the conversation about creating for multiple platforms and essentially creating content that can go on TV and can go on any screen, essentially. So People Are Deep, you just fairly recently announced a deal on Pluto for so basically licensing that content onto a FAST channel. Why does that particularly work on a FAST channel, do you think? That sort of content? Because I think, that's a really good example of, kind of similar to what we were talking about earlier on about TFI and the ways that content can be basically created for individual platforms, but essentially at the end of the day, it can be a TV show and it can sit on a FAST channel or broadcaster, for example. Talk us through the thinking around People Are Deep, and was that always the plan to actually have it as a longer form show on a channel?
So I think when we started doing this, if anyone hasn't seen it, it's basically just a weekly interview show with someone who's got an interesting life story, so a psychopath or someone who's escaped a cult or something like that. And basically what we wanted to do as a sort of experiment with ourselves is see how many places we could activate the content. And what really changed everything in our industry is TikTok, because prior to TikTok, platforms were happy for you to have aggregated content, and people would follow the content creator or the brand or whatever it was and go, oh, I like Vice, they do interesting documentaries, and this one is about a drug lord and this one is about a church in America, and I like their tone. Whereas what TikTok did was figure out that actually people just want to see the same thing that they enjoy over and over and over again. And aggregation is only really allowed if it's aggregation of the same person doing the same thing over and over again. And that really changed how everywhere functions. And really, I think fast channels are just a long form version of that. It's for people who want to sit down and just watch the Crystal Maze over and over and over again in the background and just know they have, they're cooking or they're doing whatever, but they know that comfort thing is just running, or The Office US, like just running it over and over and over again. So we spoke to Pluto, and what was interesting actually was there was a lot of TV companies we were speaking to beforehand who we just, friends in the TV industry, like, oh, you'll never make it work because it costs a lot of money to get stuff on Pluto because you have to...
Yeah, that's right, all the localization and all various other technical hoops you have to go
who's
through,
going to pay for that? And But actually what costs a lot is that if you want to put on 80 episodes of The Crystal Maze from the 90s, they're all on tapes in deep storage. And that's the expensive bit, getting them out and digitizing them and then changing the aspect ratio and all that stuff. But if you're digital first and you've shot everything in 16:9 4K, it's pretty much good to go. So actually the conversation with Pluto was great. We had a really, you've got to do a few bits in terms of the submission of the stuff, but they just said, yeah, we're happy to have a sort of like running commission where any new stuff you get, just send it through. And because the deep stuff is essentially, the people of deep stuff is just interviews to camera with people that have led different unusual lives, that's similar enough for, I guess, when people come to a channel and they see that and they go, yeah, I just want to run something like that for however long I want to run it for in the background. So that's great. And actually we haven't done it yet, but we've been in conversations with Amazon Prime and they've just opened up a portal for us to see how it goes on there as well.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
And Samsung TV possibly next, probably, or, or
well, that's the thing. It's
there's
like,
ever so many, right? There are about 10, well, there's obviously, somebody will correct me on that, but there are hundreds of fast channel providers out there, aren't there?
That's it. And we've, Hat-Trick International do our licensing as well. We've licensed people to deep to a couple of different places around the world already, a couple of different YouTube channels. We know that it doesn't cannibalize if same channel puts same content up if they've got, different audiences. So for us, it's really about, it's microtransactions. Anywhere you can get a couple of quid from, put it up there.
And it's always on, right? It's the old money while you sleep kind of approach.
Exactly, yeah. Exactly.
So you and Thom both came out of, LADbible, as we talked about. What do you think that experience then taught you that a traditional TV production background hasn't or wouldn't have?
Yeah, okay. Lots of things, for both good and bad. But the main thing that LADbible was an amazing teacher because we were there during the pandemic. And during the pandemic, the amount of people watching that content skyrocketed, and not just in terms of successful for LADbible, the amount of quantitative data that you got by looking at the back end at that point was just unbelievable. There'll never be a period like that ever again when you can see how so many different people react when they don't know they're being observed in what they're watching. And I think that just taught us so much stuff about connecting to audiences and how to connect to them. But for me, the single biggest point was to remove your creative ego. Because I remember when I got there, the first thing I went after at LADbible was doing the junkets, because I was like, they've got an opportunity here, they're not making enough out of it. They just ask people questions in front of a poster of the film. Whereas like if we can do formats, things like Snack Wars, First Impressions, and the guy that I brought from Endemol, Danny Lorimer, he also loved formats, loved little games, loved YouTube stuff. If we can take control of this.
So you launched it. So in LADbible, you kind of launched a number of formats using your access to Hollywood talent.
Exactly, yeah.
Who would usually be just having a sit down like this. Interesting.
Yeah, so that was the bit where I saw, like, while I'm figuring out how this all works and how to change my mindset from TV, that was the immediate bit where I was like, there's definitely a win here. Take it, in TV, if you've done development, you've had loads of pitches where people have said, we love that round, but we don't like the full show. You can just take a load of those little rounds, put them into these junkets things. Now it just sounds like, yeah, of course you do that. But bearing in mind, this was 8 years ago. It wasn't as common, and those things really took off and exploded. So that was that. But I remember the thing that really helped me, to get back to your question, sorry, I'm waffling a bit, is that when we started making those, I would be like, let's make them like this, so they're really nice and smooth, and we'll do this, and then we'll do the music, and that can have an intro, and then you can just see in the back end that people are stopping watching on the intro, and you kind of go,
all the polished bits.
It's all the polished bits.
Actually were the things that stopped people watching on digital.
And exactly that, all the polished bits, music in the background. If we did an A/B test, way preferred it with music in the background, but it did better without, so you've got to lose it. And I remember I saw this thing once, it was really boring TikTok, but it just spoke to me at that point. And it was basically somebody speaking, some tech guy, talking about the invention of the JPEG and how it revolutionized the internet. And what they said was photos were just enormous and you couldn't send them because at that point in the internet, it was just impossible to compress them. Yeah. And there was all these lines of data in them that you couldn't take out because it just wouldn't make sense to the human eye. And then they were like, well, let's try it. And they took them out and they were like, oh, no, it looks fine. And they're like, but we can't take those bits out because it'll just look really blurry. And then they took them out and they're like, oh, no, it's fine. You can see it. And they basically took this thing that everyone was going, if you skim it down that far, it'll just look like garbage and no one will want to look at the image. They did it all. And suddenly they had this massively compressed version that they could just send around the internet, and it revolutionized that area, that era of the internet. And I was like, that's what we're doing here. We're going, you can't take music off. Music makes it run along, and that's just, take it off, the views do the same. Oh, you can take music off. You can't take off the intro. People won't get what they're watching. You have to have the talent to explain what's about to happen. You take it off. Oh, they don't care about that. They'll pick it up as they go. And then you'd get to a point where you go, you'd take it too far and you go, let's shoot it on one camera. You don't need all these cameras. You go, no, people hated that. And you do need at least 2 cameras. But it's just skimming it down to the bits that you think have to be there is your creative ego telling you it's nicer like that. If people don't care, get rid of it. And that was the single biggest thing LADbible taught me.
Yeah. And I think that that's probably the single biggest barrier or surprising thing to traditional TV execs moving into digital, I would imagine, because they've been taught and trained over years and years working for the BBC or whoever to create, the most perfect piece of content that is technically wonderful, and then it's locked. Then you lock it, and then it's done. It's gone. Whereas this is, you're talking about test and learn, aren't you? Which is the sort of old adage with digital first, sort of learning and paring down and seeing what you can strip away.
Well, that's it. Thom and I gave a presentation at BAFTA once a year or so ago, and we talked about something like this. And at the end, in the Q&A, someone who was a very experienced documentary maker said, "Don't you think you guys are just a race to the bottom? It's also depressing, just removing all the quality in the artistry." And that is a valid point, but ultimately, that is still, if your project is costing loads more, but people don't like it as much.
Well, the economics don't work. If it works for the viewer and it doesn't work for the economics, I mean, that we're talking about the revolution that's taken place over the last 10 years or so. And and I think it's that mindset, isn't it, that's still...
And I didn't say this at the time to the person who said it, but if you're listening now, we are racing to the bottom as fast as we possibly can, because that's the only way to make things work.
Yeah. So let's look ahead to... You've been in business 3 years?
Yeah.
Let's look ahead 3 years, which, I mean, does that feel... When you look ahead in 3 years, does that feel easy to do or not? Because 3 years is a long time in digital. But equally, when you're building business plans and looking ahead, everybody's got a 5-year plan. I mean, do you anticipate a major disruption in digital first from any new platforms and any new areas, or are you fairly confident of the model that's now been established through podcasting, through YouTube, through then licensing content onto other platforms that we talked about, and creating original IP and all the different parts of your business? Do you just see that growing, or do you think there are any fundamental changes we might look out for in the industry over the next 3 years?
Yeah, so Sam Barcroft said to us right at the beginning, I think before we'd even set up, he said, it'll take 5 years before you know what your company is. And actually, at the time, you think, oh, but how come you've got a business plan? But no, I agree with him. I think Strongwatch is still in a period of development and growth, and I don't think we've hit our thing. If you look back at those really successful companies like Barcroft or LADbible or Comey or Jungle, they hit a period where they started doing something really well. So Barcroft started doing Snap before everyone else early doors, and that just became a huge thing. LADbible, obviously, the sort of aggregation of viral videos and then licensing them from people. Places like, obviously, Little Dot, amazing at, building up people's channels and channel management, and really. And I think we'll hopefully within that time we'll find what our thing is. So that in terms of the company, I think we want to continue to grow in all areas, in all directions, to land on the thing that we really just can do better than everybody else. In terms of the industry, I think we're in a position of change still. We're in a big sort of quite chaotic time. So I don't think anything's certain at the moment. You're seeing changes in different platforms. YouTube's definitely changed. A lot of people are reporting finding it much harder to forecast using YouTube. YouTube used to be the real stable rock, whereas a lot of people are now saying that the month to month it's up and down a little bit. A new platform might appear. For a while, Snapchat didn't exist at one point, and then loads of people built their business on it. TikTok didn't exist at one point, and then I think the biggest change we're going to see in the short term is I think we've been in the creator economy for a number of years. We're moving out of the creator economy now, and I think we're moving into community economy. So direct consumer, so things like Patreon just becoming much, much bigger and prevalent and being the thing that people make their money from and target, rather than the kind of symbiotic relationship brands and creators have had for a number of years. So I think that in the short form, that's what we're thinking about and talking about a lot. In the long term, I just think we don't know what the industry is going to look like yet, because, as I say, it's still in a transitional period. But people will always want content. People will always want different levels of quality of content. People won't want to watch YouTube videos at the cinema ever. People won't want to watch YouTube videos, a certain type of person. My wife will never want to watch a YouTube video on Amazon Prime or Netflix. People will still want to watch Game of Thrones. People will still want to watch that. There will always be space for a wide variety of different types of content.
Yeah. And we haven't talked about AI. Now, you're not a business that uses AI for content creation in terms of the content itself. Obviously you're using it in the background, or are you? Maybe that's my assumption. I mean, are you working with AI to create new formats and new purely AI driven pieces of content?
We're not doing that, because what we think is that there's going to be, and again, we're not certain about this, but I think we think there's going to be a big resistance to AI that you can already see happening. AI slop is the term. And I think actually at some point there'll be a proudly not AI kind of sensibility that goes on across platforms, and more having to label which things are AI, which when people do that at the moment, it feels like when things are labeled as a paid partnership, it feels like an immediate skip. It's like a warning that something's not as good quality.
Yeah.
So right now we're not creating, and we're not planning to create solely AI content, but we are using AI in every aspect of the company.
Yeah.
And my private life.
Right, yes. Yeah. Of course. And thinking about platforms, just coming back to what you were saying about, platforms. One of our recent guests was really interesting, Mark Rivers from Cold Glass Productions. He was talking about a new podcast show that they were launching, new format they were launching with Caitlin Moran. What was interesting about that is that they were using, which I never really knew, is Substack can really use, host podcasting on Substack, YouTube, and also written content. So there are platforms that can create a perhaps a even more rounded offer for particular projects that might be valuable, that might be further information that can help. I mean, have you worked with Substack to any great degree yet? Or?
Yeah, we're looking at all those things, because I think that ties into what I was saying about community economy, as in at the moment where things are directing is when you have a podcast with Caitlin Moran, you're getting Caitlin Moran fans, and ultimately they want more of that content.
Yeah.
So rather than the kind of as broad as you can possibly go, it's actually narrowing in, making it nicher, but making people feel like they're part of a community and making them feel like everything there is designed specifically for what they want. And because it's been made for them, there is a sense that there's a higher willingness to hand over a microtransaction.
Yeah.
So
it's that exclusivity, isn't it?
It is that exclusivity, and the thing that you just, I think, I mean, we can't stop thinking about it, but one of the biggest Patreons in the UK at the moment is Time Team.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I've spent a long time chatting with Tim Taylor about that, and he was at one of our recent events, and we've had a chat on a previous TellyCast episode. It's remarkable, and it's global, obviously, and it's real fandom, and the way that they bring in their fans onto actual digs. You can actually take part and be part of the program, which is it conjures up the thought of what are the shows, how you can integrate the audience actually into the show as well.
And also I think the important thing to take is it doesn't, like Tony Robinson's not in it.
Yeah.
The people that like it, I think he launched it, didn't he? But the people that liked it are the people who like that thing.
Yes.
And I think what you take from that is you go, when you'd be starting off, obviously you try and get Tony Robinson amazing, but you have to figure out what the thing they want is. Tom was talking to a company recently that do videos on trains, and that has a huge fandom, and we were talking about it, and he'd said to the people, it's great, you could do videos on blah, 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 this, that. And they came back and said, no, the thing that the people that love this, train spotters, it's not the trains, it's systems working to time. So it's the fact that all these different complex systems from an engineering point of view have to happen for the train to arrive within a 1 minute tolerance of when it's meant to be there. And actually, that was something we were talking about afterwards when we were like, that's really smart, because you might take something like Time Team and go, great, people love the show Time Team, but actually you need to really investigate. And this is kind of, when I was talking earlier about having the kind of the plan at the engine of it and the strategy, you have to figure out, why do people love that thing specifically if you want to be successful in community economy.
And it might not be what you think it is. It might not be. It might not be purely the creative.
Yeah, like if Time Team had said, we're going to just do new versions of the show and put it on Patreon, I don't think it would have been as successful as what they've done, which feels like a sort of accessible version where everyone owns a little bit of immersive, the spirit of it.
Yeah. Interesting. So, Ben, now it's time for Story of the Week.
Oh, yeah.
Get in the bin as well, and Hero of the Week. But let's start with your Story of the Week.
Story of the Week. All right. Well, I was thinking about this one. There was a couple, and the one I've chosen to say is quite difficult because basically I think there's a world where it could be misinterpreted and...
Okay,
you can help me out in the
Choose your words
help
carefully.
Me out in the edit, because I'm not basically saying something's right or wrong. I'm saying it was something I thought was interesting to think about.
Okay. Yeah.
So we talked about Piers Morgan earlier and about him having quite a good sense of or his team or whoever it is having a good sense of what's going to do well and done badly. And he announced funding for the Uncensored brand to go on. And then during the World Cup, he had his football commentary, and he put together a group of pundits that were commenting on it, and then immediately afterwards talked about how that had been picked up, Football Uncensored. And when I saw that, I thought, that's going to work. That's not one of those things that I see announced and then go, oh, I wonder how that'll do. That is going to work. And I was thinking, why am I so sure? And it's because there's loads of arseholes on Facebook who hate female pundits, as in just bigoted, misogynist people who write all this kind of like crap stuff on any football Facebook group you're on about female pundits. Yeah. And saying, we're now going to do this thing where it's like, we can say whatever we want because it's uncensored, and it's going to be a load of bloody blokes. Those people will flood to that and flock to that. And I was thinking, what I'm not saying is, great, good job, do that. What I am saying is, we all in this new world need to think carefully about where are our surefire bets. There's less guaranteed success, there's less money, there's more content being made than ever before. I mean, there's more eyeballs watching it than ever before.
There's more football content being
made. There's more football, sure.
Before.
And I thought, what he's done is just have a very clear these are the people we're targeting. And obviously, in this example I've given, it's, you know, slightly controversial potentially.
Yeah.
But we should all be thinking like, you know, not who are the people that we would like to be targeting, or it would be great if these people watched our shows. It'd be great if we could get under 24-year-olds to watch our shows. Who actually is watching your shows, and who's going to watch your shows? And then, you know, if your project aligns with that, that's a good idea.
Yeah.
Do you get what I'm saying? Because what I don't want to say is he's done a great thing by going, let's appeal to bigoted white men.
No, I do. I mean, but isn't it just an extension of the Uncensored brand anyway? Because he's already done a History Uncensored, I believe.
Yeah, that's right. And Royals.
Yes, yeah. Like I say, the football audience, you know, there's so many. I mean, we know, you know, Goalhanger and Buzz 16, other businesses are doing really, really well with football content from established ex-player pundits, essentially. But I mean, that you're saying that he's going consciously after that audience? Or?
I don't know. And I've met Piers Morgan, and he was a very well considered, intelligent, charming, charismatic person when I met him in real life.
Yeah.
And I don't think, and I actually think a lot of his original Uncensored brand is actually, he's quite nuanced in that, and he has different opinions about different things. So I'm not going to sit here and say he's targeted that. What I'm saying is there is I think a group of people who will be delighted about an uncensored take on football.
Yes, yeah. But I think to that point, what he does very well is he always tries to balance an opinion.
He does. I agree with that too. Yeah.
And so actually if we're targeting that audience, then he'll presumably, I mean, is he going to present the show himself?
I don't know.
We don't know.
I don't know.
So,
yes, no, sorry. I think, just sorry to cut you off, but what I'm not saying is he's going after that audience to say, I agree with you, there shouldn't be female pundits. What I'm saying is people will love arguing about the takes.
Yes.
That in a world where you're allowed to say whatever you think.
Yeah. Yes.
And again, my point that I'm raising isn't that this is a good or bad or anything thing. It's something that I saw as a story and then was like, I can see why that is going to work.
Yeah, yeah.
Because at the moment, there's a lot of announcements where I look at them and go, yeah, maybe, or yeah, okay,
yeah,
that could
yeah.
be.
But that's a surefire bet from your perspective.
I think so.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, we'll see how that
that shouldn't
develops.
Have stuck,
but I think what it will do, I agree with it. I mean, it's, you know, I think it's quite important in the way that it can surface those sort of bigoted views potentially and be challenged because that's what the nature of the show is. There's always different perspectives, and that's what makes the show work, is that basically people shouting at each other.
So similar to Surrounded, the Jubilee show, like exactly like two different opinions and getting both of those out. Yeah. Yeah. Sure.
Okay, so who's your hero of the week?
Andy Burnham, not because of any politically motivated...
That's a very media industry answer.
Oh, no, but the reason is not because of him.
Right.
The reason is because he's just announced he's hired a load of social media managers.
Right.
And I was like, good, because, again, I'm not saying which side I fall on, but Starmer was so shit at getting any information out there.
Yeah, his communication was terrible, yeah.
And again, I'm not saying that as, I really wanted him to be better. I'm saying it from a professional point of view.
Yeah.
I was just looking at that going like, what a train wreck. Like, you can look at all these people around you that are doing that really well and going, they're doing these things great.
Yes.
Why don't I try and have a look at how to make that work? And ultimately, I mean, my view now is that politics wins or loses based on the online presence, you know, where the Facebook groups are and what things people put out there. And
well, it's you know, as we're moving more to digital natives becoming more of the voting population, then there's much more of an impact and an influence, isn't there, from social?
Absolutely. And I saw that announcement. I was like, yeah, good idea. Fix that. Get some young people who know how to talk to other young people on different platforms.
Yeah.
That's a good idea, and it's also good for our industry because, again, it's an area that people who are creative and have worked through either TV or digital could be employed by.
Yeah. Well, he was once culture secretary, I think, at some point in the far distant past. But so maybe it's quite good having a social media literate PM.
Yeah.
Let's see.
Yeah, and again, my answer isn't politically motivated. It was just I saw that announcement and I was like, yeah, smart idea, and it's something everyone should be thinking about.
Maybe we'll see a sit-down podcast with Putin by the end of his current administration. And who or what are you telling to get in the bin?
I'm going to say the people who've been annoying me recently are the cretins on Facebook who believe AI posts.
Oh, yeah.
So in either direction, whether you're pro-Donald Trump or anti-Donald Trump, someone posts something that you look at and go, well, that's not true.
Yeah.
And then underneath are all these comments being like, this is absurd, this country's gone to hell. And then you sort of like see these kind of like clearly AI videos of whoever attacks whoever. And you know, again, I'm trying not to make it politically motivated, but it often is. And you see them posted in UK groups, you know, Crystal Palace local, and it's like, this has just happened. And you go, I could Google that, but also before I need to do that, it's clearly untrue. Yeah. And whoever needs educating on what AI content currently looks like, they can get in the bin.
Well, absolutely. And I think maybe there's a call there for some sort of digital literacy in schools, right? I mean, because, again, you know, there's the amount of misinformation that's been spread.
But I think they'll be okay. My daughter's about to be 8, and I'm trying to figure out, we're all trying to figure out our own ways as a parent. My way of doing it is that every night I watch 3 TikToks with her. She gets to choose them, but she, through that process, is learning that there's things that can appear that can look frightening to her, and her face might suddenly turn into a skull, and then she'll get a nightmare. Yeah. So part of that is that she has to identify AI and then not watch it.
Right.
And she can just do it, even if it's not labelled. Yeah. Like it'll get so good that you can't do it. But for now, I think the kids will just grow up with a lot more digital literacy, unless they're not allowed to watch content and have accounts when under 16. But
well, that's the ban. Yeah, I mean, do you agree with the ban?
Oh no, not at all. No.
Okay.
I think it's a terrible knee-jerk reaction to something. Something has to happen. Yeah. Absolutely agree with that. But this is a dreadful idea.
Okay.
But basically, I think the kids will be okay. I think it's the people that will be essentially just below my parents' age. They're on the internet. They've got their opinions. They can't be bothered to change them. They're just seeing these things that reinforce their opinions, and then they'll take that off and go, "Have you heard that?" and tell a story. And that person will then they're the ones that need the education. How do we get them that?
Yeah. Well, I'm not sure we do we? I think that generation is sort of
in the digital wasteland,
gone a little bit. Yeah, in that sense. Ben, thank you for coming on the show. It's been great.
Thanks for having me.
And best of luck with everything at Strongwatch.
Thank you very much.
It's really great to see you going from strength to strength. And again, thanks so much for coming on the show.
Thanks very much.
Well, that's about it for this week's TellyCast. Thanks to Ben Powell-Jones from Strongwatch Studios for being my guest. TellyCast was produced by Spirit Studios and recorded in London. We'll be back next week with another show. Until then, stay safe.